I envisage a future where the dollar is crumbling, quote unquote. A great deal of money is being printed. You can control the yield curve. Annual inflation rates are 15% to 20%. At 150,000, Bitcoin is expected to reach 300. With a price of 3,000, gold has the potential to reach 5,000. Someone in Washington, D.C. will eventually say, you know what, this dollar is being killed by these sound money guys. They are murderers. Furthermore, this is harmful. National security is at stake here. We need to save the dollar. Well, we've actually thought of a way to fix it. We should impose a 90% tax on capital gains from both gold and Bitcoin. Oh, and we're going to seize every single Bitcoin. In recent years, Lepard has shifted from being an ardent supporter of gold to an extreme Bitcoin advocate. He thinks the two assets are very comparable. Now he thinks Bitcoin is the best way to protect one's wealth. From the global financial crisis, irresponsible monetary policies by central banks, and the debasement of fiat currency. Executive Order 6102 was one of the many subjects discussed in Lepard's recent enlightening conversation with YouTuber Robert Breedlove. On April 5, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States signed Executive Order 6102. The decree made it illegal to store any amount of gold in the continental U.S., including coins, bullion, and certificates. This slowed down the economy and made the Great Depression even worse. By May 1, 1933, the decree demanded that everyone sell the majority of their gold assets to the Federal Reserve for $1.20.67 per troy ounce. Lepard brought up some disturbing similarities between the 1930s economic crisis and the present-day economic climate during his conversation with Breedlove. Specifically, he warns that Bitcoin might soon be the target of a comparable order from the United States government. Let's circle back to Roosevelt's motivations. Well, that was the Great Depression. Yes, that was 1933. Most of the banks had recently collapsed. Deflation was massive. Big, by the way. There has never been anything like it. Home prices plummeted by 90%, every single one of these banks. Despite their best efforts to print and distribute more money, the system simply could not handle the demand. By the way, they were on par with the gold standard, and they were also aware that the unemployment rate was 30%. Going to a bank and back again might turn $1 into $20 worth of gold. They were also aware that in order to escape the deflationary environment, inflation would be necessary, and that inflation would necessitate an increase in the price of gold. My grandpa despised Roosevelt because of what he did once he realized it was unlawful behavior. He threatened a $10,000 fine if you didn't surrender your gold. Incidentally, even during that time, there was a great deal of non-compliance. The majority of the population was submissive and trusted the government, but there were still several who refused to perform what was asked of them. Quite a few did. Unsurprisingly, he promptly reduced its worth from $20.67 to $35 after turning it in. It was a depreciation of 70%. In order to reinflate the currency and escape the deflationary event that had happened, which, incidentally, had been caused by the Federal Reserve violating their charter, the government took the dollar and pegged it to gold terms. However, Americans were not allowed to own gold at the time, so the dollar was effectively demonetized. Yes, they printed money to support the war right away, which was a clear violation of the charter. They persisted in keeping interest rates artificially low, which led to the 1929 bubble. The failure to print sufficient funds following the bubble's burst was the mistake, according to Bernanke, a scholar of the Great Depression. No, the initial error was keeping interest rates artificially low, which led to the bubble. Along those lines, it was a major setback for my grandpa and grandma's firm, which they had enlarged in 27 and had gone on debt to do so. They misunderstood the signals. Hey, the economy is on fire was the alert. Expanding your business is a must, not to mention that the economy wasn't booming. Due to false signals, the economy was experiencing hyperinflation. In order to escape a deflationary trap, they acted accordingly. It was later determined that allowing citizens to own this was too risky. We prefer to keep this gold under our hands rather than hand it out to the people. It seems you're no longer able to control it. The value of gold and gold mining stocks increased by a factor of 10 throughout that decade. Reason being, it was the exclusive means by which American citizens may partake in gold. Absolutely correct. Here we are, so I guess it's time to go forward. On top of that, this is a contentious issue. Also, I've heard from prominent figures in the Bitcoin community and others who advised me not to emphasize the hyperinflation plot point. Even more terrifying is the rationale for avoiding hyperinflation. Also, we would prefer not to scare anyone. Also, we'd like to think positively about Bitcoin and its future. When I first started using Twitter a few years ago, I would regularly share a hyperinflation graphic. Maintaining my non-doomsday outlook. Come on, let's be practical. We may have hyperinflation as a result of the current monetary trap. No one can dispute that. My hope is that, in the ideal possible world, we can experience significant inflation and then move on to sound money. Since hyperinflation causes harm to several individuals, no way, I'd rather that not occur. It would be equally naive, in my opinion, to act as though it can't happen. You're not doing anything except staring at the floor. Sure thing. Now let's talk about the state. They deceive us, and we know it. They safeguard themselves, as is well known. They will stop at nothing to ensure the success of their plot, as we are well aware. Foreseeing this is the reason I believe everyone should self-custody and stay out of the ETFs. I envisage a future where the dollar is crumbling, quote-unquote. A great deal of money is being printed. You can control the yield curve. The annual rate of inflation is 15% to 20%. At 150,000, Bitcoin is expected to reach 300. With a price of 3,000, gold has the potential to reach 5,000. Plus, someone in Washington, D.C. will inevitably point out that these sound money types are ruining the dollar, harming the economy and threatening national security. The dollar must be preserved. It will turn into a crusade, similar to how they sold bonds to fund WWWII. Greedy bankers are bad guys. They are completely ruining our wonderful Keynesian system. We have a solution for it. A capital gains tax rate of 90% on gold is necessary. Levy a 90% tax on Bitcoin capital gains and perhaps compel them to surrender their gold. Obviously, gold isn't owned by anyone anymore. Trust me when I say that all those armed individuals who shop at Costco are going to be parting with their gold. Over their lifeless body, it is done. Just so you know, they may mention that they're going to seize all the Bitcoin. Some even go so far as to speculate conspiratorially that they may have allowed these ETFs to go through because they wanted something in a system that they could manipulate and intervene with. It'd be preferable to having everyone engage in hoarding and find their own method of self-custody. Because a 6,102 on Bitcoin would be rather simple to implement if they so choose. They contact all the big names, Fidelity, BlackRock, etc. They claim that it is finished, folks. Send us the Bitcoin and give them the cash. In the US, owning Bitcoin is against the law. In your opinion, what are the chances of that happening? There is no zero. I mean, I have no idea if they're 50%. That is beyond my handicapping abilities. My best estimate is that it's a 30% chance, but I'd say maybe today. It is my sincere wish that we have successfully pushed these issues to the side, and that there are sufficient Bitcoiners, advocates of sound money, and knowledgeable people to ensure that their system collapses without them gaining the upper hand. Understand what I'm saying? At least that is my wish, and that we can reach our level without their interference. However, it's possible that my wish is naive. They may attempt it, Since this is why there is a risk, and because you already know this, and because we diehard maxi Bitcoiners say not your keys, not your coins, it is important that the audience hear this. Oh, and if you're holding your coins in an exchange-traded fund ETF at Coinbase, they can contact you and offer you cash instead. Sure, we get that they're valued $200,000 each. Rest assured, we will not take them from you. You will be required to return those coins to the government, but we will pay you the current market value in cash. Guys like me will say things like mole on the bay, mum. If they chose to take that path and steal what I've worked for over 66 years. I am en route to Italy by boat. I am prepared with my 12 points, and I will proceed to El Salvador by sea until Italy agrees to join us. However, I will reside in an area that honors my property rights.